Hey everyone, welcome to day 1 of my 100-day VueJS coding challenge. In the next 100 days, I'll be recording my progress in making my first VueJS site in real time. Well, almost real time, a video every couple days. It won't be polished like a tutorial, but it will go further than most beginner tutorials, and you'll get to see what a realistic progression looks like when you're building a first app that ends up, hopefully, pretty complex. Okay, so I realize that we're not supposed to go for complex. I get that. But for the purposes of learning and learning how to handle complex things is good. You just don't want complex things in your actual production code. A bit about me. This is my first VueJS site, but I have been watching VueJS tutorials for a couple weeks without coding any. Not recommended, by the way. And I do work as a software developer and have for several years. So this won't be a thing where you watch me learn the absolute basics from scratch. But it hopefully will still be helpful. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started. So the framework we're going to be using is VueJS. Specifically, the version we're going to be using is 2.6.10. Although if you're using a version that's later than this, unless it's 3.0, then probably everything that I'm writing here will work in your app. And even with 3.0, there won't be too many breaking changes. So this should work for a long time. Then to install it and get all our tooling set up, we're going to be using Vue CLI. Specifically, we're going to be using the 4.0 release candidate. Now, back in the old alpha days of 4.0, there were a lot of breaking changes, but it looks like those have slowed down and they're doing a lot of bug fixes now, just to get ready for the actual release. So we'll go ahead and use that. So let's go ahead and grab this yarn command and go to our command line, and then we'll be installing Vue CLI 4. All right, so I sped some of that up, and I also opened up a new window so that we could get it working. So Vue-V, we'll see that we're using 4.0.0-RC2. That is exactly what we want. By the way, if you are following along and 4.0 has been released, you'll only need to do that when you're adding it to Yarn. Okay, so let's actually make our Vue app. So there are a lot of commands you could use. One of them is Vue UI, which opens up a really cool GUI for us to use. Unfortunately, there is an issue that makes it so we can't. Unfortunately, there's a bug with it right now, so we can't use it to create stuff. But we can still use Vue Create. So let's create our name. So we'll call it Vue Screencasts, because we may need a place to host these videos later, especially if we want it to have a worldwide reach. YouTube and Vimeo are currently blocked in China, so we'll need a special site for that. All right, so let's go ahead and pick one of the presets. We could manually select features, but let's go ahead and go with one of these defaults. All right, so now it's installing the packages. All right, awesome. So everything is generated, and let's go ahead and go into that folder and type yarn serve and see what we have. So it's going to take a little while to build it. And now we can check here. All right, it's running. Awesome. It shows us that we have installed the following CLI plugins: Babel, ESLint, Router, and VueX. So Babel lets us write modern JavaScript that's then compiled down to the older style that can run in all the browsers. ESLint makes sure our code is nice. got the router and VueX, which we'll be looking at more later. When I'm getting started on any code base, I like to take a look around and see what's already there, get the lay of the land. Fortunately, since this is a new project, it won't be that difficult. There's not much there yet, but we still want to see what is there. So let's get started on that. All right, so I've got our project folder open in VS Code. You can use whichever editor you want. It doesn't really matter, whatever you're comfortable with. So we have 3 folders and 5 files. Let's go over the files first. Gitignore is pretty standard. For JavaScript project, we've got the node modules and /dist ignored, as well as the local environment files, the log files, and the editor files. Looks like they have it for a lot of different editors. The Babel config, we have the preset, and that tells Babel to use the preset compilation. If we wanted to use some more cutting-edge JavaScript features, then we could go ahead and mark it down here, and then Babel would know to compile those. All right, our package.json, there's a lot of action going on in here. So there's the name of our project, the version, which we can, this really matters if we're creating a library for others to use. Doesn't really matter for our purposes. Here are scripts. Notice we typed in yarn serve to get it working, and it actually does this behind the scenes. Now we have our dependencies. We've got Vue, Vue Router, and VueX, that is what we wanted. We asked for those. We didn't ask for core.js. So what's that? Turns out it is a bunch of polyfills for modern JavaScript. So promises, symbols, collections, iterators, typed arrays, so on and so forth. I think this is something that Babel uses. So those 4 are our dependencies, and those are what's shipped with the app. The dev dependencies, we're going to be using them when we're developing, but they're not going to be shipping with the app. So we're not going to ship a copy of Babel with our JavaScript payload that we send to the user. Same with ESLint, Sass. These are all going to be doing their work. Pre-compilation with Babel, and then linting, another pre-compilation, more pre-compilation. Lots of compilation going on. So those are our dependencies and our dev dependencies. Later on, if we want to add something like a testing suite, it would go into dev dependencies. And if we wanted to add something like Nuxt.js, it would go into dependencies. Now let's look at the rest of the package.json. So there's the ESLint config, which is going to tell us which things to parse, which things to throw errors on. We won't look too much into that for now. And then post CSS, I think that's a Sass thing. And then browsers list, that's interesting. That is used by Babel and several other add-ons. So here are the list of things that it's used in. So Babel and ESLint are important for us for now. So in this list, rather than listing every browser individually, because there are a lot now, we have 2 criterion. The last 2 versions of a specific browser, or any browser with greater than 1% market share. So we can look at our usage stats and see that we will not be targeting IE6, but we will be targeting, I don't know if I can find any that are not in the last 2 versions with greater than 1%, because we have evergreen browsers now. This is great. So the upshot of all this is that because we're only targeting modern and popular browsers, then we don't have to worry about IE7 support. And that means we have to include fewer polyfills. We're going to be compiling the code or transpiling the code into JavaScript that's more modern. And That means more readable and probably a smaller payload size. And we don't have to include as many edge cases. So that's really good. Of course, if you did need to target those older browsers, just put it in here and everything's going to be taken care of for you. All right, next file, the README. This is just basics. Once our setup gets more complex, we'll probably put in some more stuff for future users of this code. And then our yarn lock. This is like a package lock.json if you've used npm, but this is just the yarn version of it. It's a little bit cleaner, I think. All right, now let's look at those folders. So node modules, that's pretty standard. It's just all the node modules, and I mean, there are a lot, but that's fine. Then there's public, which is just our favicon, which is a little Vue icon, and then index.html. So that has our title with our name, and then if there's no script, it'll show a message. So if they don't have JavaScript enabled. So there's not a whole lot going on here. This is where we're gonna auto-inject our files that we build using what's in source. And so this is our actual Vue app. So let's look in main.js. So this is where we are starting Vue. We import Vue from Vue, we create a new Vue instance, and then we put in our router and our store, which we are importing from router and store from the index.js files that are on each of those folders. And then we're going to be rendering our app, which we import from here. And then we're mounting it on the app ID, which is right here. Okay, so that's what's happening here. It's basically starting our Vue app. Let's go ahead and look at what's in router and store real quick. So in store, in this file, we have a vuex.store that we're creating. And currently there's nothing in there, but we'll fix that as time goes on. And this will become very useful, but for now, we'll just leave it alone. With router, so this is a little bit more. So we have a list of routes, and we have two routes that have been auto-generated for us, home and about. So home we can access on the path // and about we can access on the path /about. And let's go ahead and try that in the browser. So we'll go to here, and we're already on home, and then we go to about, and it'll show us the about page. And how do we decide what to show in each of those? Well, so the home component is listed here, and that's imported through here. And then the about page is a little bit different because it links directly to a view. So our component is just a function that we create here, and we directly import the view. And so this gives us code splitting, which means that when we're loading anything else, then this is not loaded. So in larger apps, that can be great. We don't really need it here. They're just doing it here to show us that we can do it. So let's go ahead and look at that view that we're loading there. It should be pretty simple. And yeah, it's just a template that says this is an about page. Then let's go back to our router and see that, okay, so the component in the home route is the home component, but it's coming from views/home.view. And yeah, it's laid out like a component. The question I'm having right now is, if it's a component, why is it in the views folder and not the components folder? Well, I looked it up, and it turns out this is a Vue Router convention. So something that's reusable that you can use in multiple pages, you keep in the components folder. And something that's referenced directly from the router, you keep in the views folder. So you basically have one view for each of your routes. And then they use stuff that's within the components folder. So that's just a convention. It's a useful convention, but if you feel like doing something else, you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the convention. All right, so let's take a look at our home component. So in our script, basically all we're doing is importing the Hello World component and setting it there, and then using it in here after putting in our Vue logo. And then our Hello World component is a little bit more complex. It is actually mostly template. So we're taking in one props, that's the message. And you can see that we're feeding in those props there. So that's a pretty easy way of putting in props. That's nice. And we've got a little bit of scoped SCSS. So this will only be in this component. That is really nice. That's going to save a lot of time. And then we have just a lot of HTML. Mostly links. All right, cool. So I'm pretty sure this is mostly explored. So we do have our app.vue, which is, all right, so we're gonna have our home and about pages up at the top. That's what's putting those in right here. And then we have a router view component. So basically, this is what's shown everywhere. And then we put in our router. And we've got some styling that I think is app-wide. So, I mean, don't use a nav ID anywhere else and you'll be fine. And then finally, we've got our assets, which is just a logo right now. All right, so that is what Vue CLI gives us to start. That took a little bit longer to explain than I expected, but that's okay. Now we know where everything is, and we can get started on building our own app with confidence. In this section, we're going to take a list of videos and then display them on the home page. So we'll be working with our first data and messing with our first template. It's relatively simple, but it's a good, nice starting exercise. Plus, it's something we need to do for the site. All right, let's get started on the code. Here is what we're displaying right now on the home page. And this is what it's going to look like by the end of this section. There wasn't a whole lot of code that I actually had to write to get this to work, but there were a lot of concepts to learn and several gotchas that I ran into. Let's take a look at those. The first thing we want to do is remove the Hello World component. So let's go ahead and remove it from the template. And uh-oh, it looks like there's an error. So if we register the component but don't use it, we can't load our app. That's kind of surprising, but I guess it's nice. So we're going to remove it from there. And oh look, there's another error because it's defined but never used. Okay, so we have to do all of that. And now we can view our home page without the component. While we're thinking about it, let's go ahead and delete the Hello World component. All right, now it's gone. We'll go ahead and remove this image as well and have an H1 that says videos. Okay, so far so good. So this acts just like a regular template, but it's got some special properties. And one of those properties is that it can pull data from the data key in your JavaScript. Now, when I was reading some of the docs, the data key looked like this. But it turns out that is not something we can do anymore. So this needs to be a function. All right, so this, and then it'll return a hash. Okay, so it's compiling, and then to use this, we'll create an H2, and then we'll just type in my key. All right, there we go. So anything we have on the hash that's returned from the data function can be used in these handlebars like this. But we don't want to just say, hey, we want to show a list of videos. So I'll go ahead and paste in a list of videos, and you'll see that they have a name and a description. We'll put more information on them later. But this should be enough to get us started with our for loop. So let's go ahead and get that for loop going. So we'll stick everything in a class of video container, and then we'll have another div that contains our for loop. So we're going to use v-for, and we'll have video in videos. So that's going to take the videos array here and loop over it and give us video. And I'm just going to output video.name in an H3 just to show you that it works. And all right, so it's giving us an error because it needs the vbind key directive. So we could do vbind key or the shortcut just key, and then we'll go ahead and use the video name. It's not ideal. You want a unique ID, and this is unique enough for now. All right, so it stopped complaining, and here we are. Here we have our 8 video titles. We've got our video titles. I do want to start doing a little bit of styling. So I'm not great at styling stuff, but we're going to work with what we have, and later on we may use something like Vuetify. But I'm going to show you how the style tag works here. So let's go ahead and put a class, and we'll call it video box. And then we'll look here and see if it's applied. And it is. Excellent. So it's being applied to everywhere in the for loop. So now let's go to the bottom of our home.vue file, and we'll make a style tag. All right, so it's automatically scoped, which is good, which that means it won't accidentally apply to our about page. So we'll start off with video container, and then inside that we'll put video box. And this is going to give us an error. It's because it's not expecting nested, because we haven't told it that we're working within SCSS first yet. So there we go. Now it knows what we're doing. And so we're going to go ahead and give it a border. And it's not showing up. Well, that is not good. Let's take a look here. Got the video box, and nothing's happening. Well, that's unfortunate. Check that we spelled everything correct. And then let's go ahead and put it on a div inside the for loop. And we'll see that now it's applying. So even though the class technically applied here, it for some reason didn't want to handle the styling. So that's interesting. But it is what it is. So let's go ahead and put some other stuff on here. I'll go ahead and paste it in. And then it's looking a little bit better, a little bit closer to what we're aiming for. What we want next is to have the description show below this. And to do that, we're going to use a special view tag. Here in description, you'll notice that we've got a template string and it has paragraph tags within it. So if we try to just do the description like this, then it's not going to look great. It has escaped all those tags so that you can see the p tag. So what can we do to fix that? Well, Vue has a special directive. So it is called vHTML, and we're going to feed it the video.description and do that. And now it displays nicely. Right, so a paragraph here, and instead of showing the paragraph tag, it actually creates a new paragraph. All right, so we are now really close to getting it looking like we want, or at least good enough for now. So let's go ahead and put in our thumbnail and then get everything lined up to the left. For the thumbnail, I'm just going to put in a generic image for now. And then we'll be able to put in our custom one per video after we get everything lined up correctly. So as you can see, this is a nice little picture of a cat. And to get everything to line up, first, okay, let's go down here to our style, and we'll do text align left. And that gets everything to the left. And then we're going to want to do some flexbox magic so that this stays on the left and then this stuff goes right here. So we'll go ahead and put display flex, justify content flex start, and then some stuff to control the image size and padding. Okay, and then to make that work, we're going to want to have our image on the left and then this box on the right. Don't worry if you don't understand all of this. This is just Flexbox stuff, styling stuff. You can use whatever styling paradigm you like. All right, so this is looking pretty good so far. Our next step is to have custom URLs. So I'll go ahead and just completely replace the videos hash with one that has the custom URLs in here, and it's under the thumbnail property. All right, so let's go ahead and instead of this source being the same for everyone, we'll do this and have it as video.thumbnail. All right, so it's grabbing from here for each one. And there we go. This is looking pretty good. This is a little bit too long, I think. So instead of a max height, we'll do a width of maybe 200. Okay, that's looking nice. All right, so this is what we'd planned on doing. We have accomplished what we set out to do in this section. Along the way, we encountered the style part of the Vue component, including how to make it scoped and how to select a language. We learned about the data function and the hash that it returns. We learned that when you're removing a component, you can't just remove it up here. If it's the last usage, you got to remove it in the components hash down here and in your imports. Then we learned about the v-for loop and how it has to have a v-bind of key. And so here we're using name, although that's not ideal, but it should be unique. And we have our image, that is the v-bind of source, and we learned how to do curly brace tags like this. And finally, we learned about the vHTML. And so this takes stuff with tags and makes it so it displays it like it's supposed to be done. All right, we've done a lot of good stuff so far. Our next step is going to be making those links clickable so that when we go to them, we can view a page just for that video. We're not going to have the video watchable yet. That's in the step after this, but it's going to be a huge step forward. And to do that, we're going to learn a lot about VueX and the Vue Router. This is what we're going to be aiming for. So it's just like before, except when we click on this, it'll take us to a page with this URL, and then I'll have a place where the video is going to be, then the title, and then the description. And of course, if you click on a different one, it'll take us to a different page with the information for that video as well. So let's get started on this step by step. First, we're going to go to our router and we're going to create a new route. The path is going to be /video, and then we're going to want an ID. We'll figure out how to do that later. And the name of it, we'll call it video watch. And then our component, we're going to make a video watch component, and we're going to go ahead and import the video watch component and then go ahead and create it. And so it's going to be a view, and we're going to get it from the views because it's referenced from the router. All right, so this is going to need a template, and it's also going to need a script. For the template, let's start off super basic, just so we can see that it's working. And then the router, let's go ahead and just make this /video for now. I got a little bit ahead of myself. Okay, so /video. All right, so we're getting to our new route. Everything's working as expected. Then we can do this and see what happens. Okay, nothing's showing up there. All right, and that matches, but we actually want to be able to pass an ID. Let's say we want to watch the first video. So we want to watch the one about arrow functions. What do we put in? Well, so we've got two problems. First is that there's not really anything to recognize this by. So if you look in our data in home, we could do it by name. So we could do this. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. We'll have this and we'll make it display that parameter. So we're going to go here and we're going to have ID, and we have to do params true in order to get it accepted. All right, so that's going to be the parameter, and the parameter is going to be ID. And then in here, we access the route, and then params, and then ID. And I think this will work. It does not. Template root requires exactly one element, so we need to wrap all this within a div. That, by the way, is going away in Vue 3, but for now. Okay, so here we go. This is displaying right there. And we accessed it by going to the route and getting the params, and then the one specific param that we defined here. We also had to set params true. So this is good. This is progress. We've passed something in from the URL, but we don't have access to the entirety of this. And it's going to be difficult to get access to it because it's stored on the home component, and we're not accessing the home component from the video watch component. But there is a way around that, and that is VueX. VueX is a state management library for Vue applications. And basically it's a centralized store and then ways for accessing it and changing it. If you've heard of Flux or Redux, it is not quite the same, but it has a lot of similarities. We don't have to get into a whole lot of it now because all we need is for it to store the state right now. We don't need to change any of it. Let's go to store index and we'll see that there's a state hash, and let's go ahead and put some videos on it. And we'll grab those videos from here. All right, paste those, and then we'll go ahead and access them from here. So we'll do this dot state. Actually, no, this dot store. And then call state on the store and then get the videos. And let's go ahead and make sure that worked. All right, so we're still accessing the videos. And so what we're doing here is $store gets us access to this, basically. And then we're getting state and then videos on here, which is just an array. It's also an array that we can access from video watch. So we're going to go ahead and have a computed property on video watch. And so computed properties, they basically recompute anytime that the data feeding them changes. So we're going to say video. All right, and the video function is, it's a function, but it'll act like a property. So you can reference it, in your template like this. All right, so we're going to return first. We're going to get the store and the state and the videos, and then we're going to select which video we want. So as our argument to this function, find takes a function and it returns one value. All right, and so we can go ahead and match the name, and that'll match to this route.params.id. Okay, so we have our arrow function one, and let's see if this works. So we have our video, and we'll see if the name. All right, so that's working. We'll put in the description. Okay, cool. So we're able to access the entire video using just the name fed into this parameter. But there is an issue here. So let's say that we have that link, but then someone changes the title. Say they make it not plural, or they realize it was ES 2016 or something like that. Now, all of our links out in the world are broken. So it's much better to have a unique ID, which no other item of that type will have. And we will just have 1 through 8, although a lot of times they'll create some sort of hash. All right, I just added an ID to everything. And so then we're going to go back to video watch and start matching it up via ID instead of by name. So now instead of matching with this, there we go. It's matching by ID. Let's go ahead and make this screen a little bit prettier. I mean, we're not going to win any design awards here, but we can still do what we can. And finally, we'll put our thumbnail, and that will be the video.thumbnail. we'll do a little bit of styling. All right, and not stylus. I don't know why it autocorrects to that. All right, and for our image, we'll just do a max width of, say, 60%. Here we go. Maybe make the max width 50%. Ah, yes, much nicer. So this is where the video is going to go. And then we'll deal with styling the stuff down here even better later. So we are almost where we want to go. The one thing we have left to do in this section is to make each of these clickable so it'll take us to the appropriate video watching page. To do that, we're going to use the router link component. So we see these in app.vue. That's what these are. And we'll go ahead and copy one of these and then use it in our home view. All right, so we'll go ahead and put it on the outside of the video box. So if you click anywhere in the video box, it'll take you there. And we don't actually want it to take you to about, but all right, it's a good demonstration that it's working and surrounding the place that we expect it to. Now let's go ahead and make this dynamic. So instead of taking us to about, it'll take us to video/3 or whatever the ID is. Now, my first instinct was to do something like this, but Vue very much does not like that. And then I tried to do something like this, where, you know, you do this, basically all the JavaScript stuff. Once again, Vue does not like this, any of the typical JavaScript solutions. Turns out there's a custom Vue thing where you do a vbind to, which this is short for, and you have quotes, and then you have a hash, which you put in the name or the path. I like the name better. So what do we name this? Was it just video? No, it was video watch. And then you put in the params, and here's where you put in the video.id. And then you close that out, and now it should work. Yeah. So, I mean, this took me some doing. By the way, they have path in a lot of the documentation. That's a lot trickier. I'd just stick with name, especially if you have params. And there you have it. We have our links that work, that take us to the correct page. All right, so that was a lot that we learned. We had our first look at the VueX store, just storing something in state, and then accessing that from the home component right here, and from the video watch component right here. Then we dealt with the router and our first set of params. So we had the ID param, and we accessed it using this $route.params, then the name of the param. Then we saw how to include that param in a router link, like this. I'm really happy with our progress so far, and it's only the first day. We're going to see if we can tackle just a little bit more, trying to get the video actually playing on the route. So this was a lot easier than I thought it would be. It just involves installing an outside library and then configuring it. And then boom, we have video. All right, let's get started on that code. So what we're going to want to do is stick the video right here where the thumbnail is. The thumbnail was always kind of a placeholder. So let's go in, and we're going to want our video player right there. But first we're going to need a little bit more data. So in our store, we're going to go and put in a video URL. I'll actually go ahead and paste in a new set of videos that all have the video URL. Now that we've got the data we need, let's go ahead and search for a video player. So I searched for a Vue video library in Google, and this is the first thing that came up. And so it's fairly popular. I mean, playing videos somewhat niche, so 8,500 weekly downloads is good. And it's a wrapper for Vue.js, which is even more popular. All right, so it has some instructions. So it says to npm install. We're using yarn. So I did yarn add Vue video player -- save. And we'll go ahead and do that. All right, and so this has changed our package.json and added Vue video player to our dependencies. And now we just need to use it in the video watch component. The README for this library has some nice instructions. So we could do it globally, but we want to do it within a specific component. So we're going to import the styles and then import the component. And then we're going to put on the components hash. All right, and then we're going to need to use the component. There are a lot of options which we're going to be using later, but for now we're just going to take the first three. All right, so we've got these, and we're going to close it out and then close it out here. And so the class is just styling, and options is where we're going to be doing most of the configuration. And we're going to go ahead and return options as a computed property, player options. And this is going to be a hash. And let's see what options they give us. I scrolled right past it. Okay, so they say to do it in data. I found that it works better in computed since we're going to be referencing the video, which is a computed property. All right, so we'll copy all these and then customize them. So muted, not true. Language, English, yes. Playback rates. Let's go ahead and add 2.5 and 3.0 because I know some of you guys listen to it on that. The poster is going to be this.video and then the thumbnail. And then the source will be this.video.video URL. And let's see what that gets us. And this is looking pretty good. We'll play it. And yeah, I used to run a site called Ember Screencasts. And all right, this is great. And we'll make sure that it plays all of them. Good, it's got our thumbnail. And then it's playing the correct video. Good stuff. The one thing that I would change is that I'd like it to be in the center. So let's go ahead and inspect this, and we'll see, and we'll go ahead and reload this so those errors go away. All right. So video player is there, and then the video itself, video player is the entire thing, and then this has a class VueJS, and this is what we want to center. So we can go ahead and put a style on there of margin auto, and that's going to center it. But we can't, do it in the dev tools every time. So let's go to the class VueJS and use margin auto. All right. Interesting. It's not working. Let's reload and see what's happening. And it is still not working. And so the reason behind this is video player is a different component. And so the scoped means that we're not reaching into that other component. If we take out the scoped, now it works. So what I want to do, first, we're not using that image anymore. So let's go ahead and have it unscoped, but we're going to wrap it inside video player box. So it's not going to do every single video player, just the ones with this class, which should be just the one in this component. All right, so we're removing one item of safety, but adding another. And if we had more styles here, that might be an issue. We would have to, wrap it in something like this. And then wrap everything in that. But since we have only this one style, we don't have to do that yet. That's just something to keep in mind. And now we have a page which plays video. All right, I think it's time to call it a day. As you can see, it is dark out here. It was dark when I started. It is dark now that it's done, and this is summer up in the north. So yeah. Anyways, I learned a lot today. I hope by following along, you were able to learn a lot as well. And we definitely got a really good start for day one. Now, in the next couple of days, I won't be able to spend quite as much time on it. I'm going to be doing some client work, but I will be starting to connect it with a backend, and then I will be looking into something such as Vuetify that can help make it a little bit more beautiful. So Vuetify is material design, and it'll make it look more like a standard app. All right, so if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. And let me know if I'm doing Vue, if I did anything incorrectly in Vue. We are all learning here. All right, I'm excited to see you next time.